Stinging nettle is a medicinal plant that lots of people are aware of, even if they've got no interest in herbal medicine, because it's really so easy to identify. Just brushing against it with bare skin can result in contact dermatitis immediately, and the reason for that is because the stems and the undersides of the leaves are covered in these tiny needle-like hairs that contain both formic acid and some antigens, and when that comes into contact with the skin, it turns into a bit of a burning rash pretty quickly, but fortunately it only tends to last a short period of time before it subsides. And this has led many people to believe that nettle is just a nuisance, but it's actually a potent nutritive that has an incredible array of medicinal benefits. Nettle's a tonic adaptogen that's had a long history of use, and it contains many important nutrients. It's an astringent and a diuretic. It stimulates the production of breast milk in lactating mothers. It's a tonic for the liver, the gallbladder, the spleen, kidneys, and lungs. It's an expectorant and an anti-asthmatic and a natural antihistamine. It strengthens the meridian channel system within the body and supports the circulation of qi throughout that system. It's really great for building healthy blood, and it's commonly used in the natural treatment of diabetes and arthritis. Nettle's a member of the Urticaceae family, although stinging nettle specifically is the Urtica dioica species, which is generally what people are referring to when they're talking about nettle as a food and a medicine. It's super easy to wild harvest, and it's really cheap to buy, organically grown, and it's really well suited to pretty much everybody, so it's a very simple, direct, and straightforward way of getting top-class medicine into your life. Nettle's an edge species, meaning that it likes to grow on the edge of an ecosystem or where two ecosystems merge, and these ones are a really good example of that because you can see they're growing right on the edge of the woodland here, and also right on the edge of a field. Now, organic nettle's obviously a really good option, but if you do have stinging nettle growing wild near where you live, then that might be an even better option if you can take the time to go and wild harvest it and cook with it or dry it out and make it into a tea or whatever, because basically the soil matrix within the wild ecosystem is going to be a lot less disturbed, so it's probably going to contain more nutrients, so the stinging nettle is going to have a much higher likelihood of having all of the beneficial constituents and nutrients in it that it should have anyway. Now, as I said a moment ago, nettle does contain some toxic components within its needle-like hairs, but these can be completely broken down through either cooking or very thorough drying. And it's actually incredibly nutritious. It contains high levels of iron, calcium, zinc, magnesium, potassium, manganese. It's got a number of different B-vits, and it's also very rich in A or beta-carotene, C and D too. So if you're going to wild harvest nettle, it's best done in early springtime, which for me is right now. We're just transitioning out of winter and into spring right now. So ideally you want to be picking it then, because as it ages it gets taller, it gets a lot bigger, but the stems and the leaves become a lot more tough and a lot more fibrous. So if you're going to use it as a food, it's definitely best to pick it while it's still young and fresh, and you don't really want to be harvesting it at all once it blossoms later in the year and it has these flowers, because it then accumulates cystoliths, which are calcium carbonate crystals, and they can cause calcification within the body. Most commonly they can irritate the kidneys and contribute towards kidney stones. Prior to nettle flowering, however, the leaves are perfectly safe to harvest, although I only normally harvest the top 2 or 3 sets of leaves. You can see that they grow in pairs in an opposing formation from layer to layer. So I normally take the top 2 or 3 layers of leaves because that's where all the new growth is, that's where most of the nutritional value lies. But also this is sustainable harvesting of nettle, because when we're taking the new growth, we're stimulating more growth. So we're basically allowing the plant to regenerate. All parts of this plant can be harvested for medicine. The roots, the seeds, the leaves, although they all have very different medicinal applications. The root, for example, is anti-aromatase, and it's a sex hormone binding globulin inhibitor, which is why it's often used in men's health for increasing testosterone and for prostate health. The seeds are a really good tonic for the endocrine system, and they're great for eliminating gastrointestinal parasites, but to be honest, the root and the seeds, that's like subjects for another video. In this video I'm pretty much focusing solely on the leaves. Now obviously nettle makes an amazing source of food, but it can also be prepared as a medicine in other ways. You know, we could dry it and powder it and use the powder. Maybe we could put the powder into capsules. We can make a tincture with it. We can make a really good tea with it. If you want to know how to make the best possible tea out of nettle, like a very rich, strong infusion of it, go to this video here where there's full instructions on how to do that. So really, I love eating it, but in terms of herbal preparation, I definitely prefer the tincture and especially the tea, because I find that in that form nettle has already been very thoroughly extracted, so it's very easy to absorb, you know, and actually utilize all of its beneficial constituents. I do prefer that over using it as a powder, but of course, you know, there may be some instances where that's the best option for somebody, but personally I do prefer the tea, the tincture, and eating them fresh. Nettle leaves are commonly used throughout springtime, not only because they're growing during that time, but also because they help to reduce the symptoms of seasonal allergies. Because it's thought that the plant histamines in nettle actually reduce the body's own release of histamines and therefore lowering the allergic response, and so they can be very useful in treating things like hay fever and other seasonal allergies. From the TCM perspective, nettle is considered a Jing herb, not only because it's an amazing tonic for the kidneys and the adrenals and an overall restorative to the body, but also because it's very good for the bones, the joints, the hair, the skin, and the nails. And consuming nettle internally and bathing in it on a regular basis is also very good for all types of eczema. Nettle nourishes the mucous membrane of the intestinal tract, and it's very good at supporting digestive health overall when it's consumed regularly. And as an infusion, it's actually readily absorbed by the fluids and soft tissues of the body, so it can nourish our entire being very well, even down to toning the capillaries. And it's said to nourish our subtle anatomy as well, so it's healing and strengthening the various channels that act as a conduit for our qi, or vital energy. Nettle's a really good natural treatment and preventative for hemorrhoids because it reduces inflammation of blood vessels within the anal canal. And the infusion is also a really good treatment and preventative for gastric ulcers. This is an excellent herb to take throughout pregnancy and postpartum too, not only because it increases the production and flow of breast milk, but also because it's a very good astringent and diuretic, so it can reduce water retention. And because it's very rich in minerals like potassium, it can offset a lot of the mineral deficiencies that are so commonly associated with synthetic diuretics, so that makes nettle a really safe option for this. It also has anti-purine properties due to its diuretic ability to excrete uric acid from the body, which makes it especially good for gout. And because of its anti-inflammatory and immune-enhancing nature, it's great for rheumatoid arthritis. In the wild, nettle likes to grow near a natural water source, and there's a stream just over there, and there's nettles coming up all over the place around here. Now that water energy is something that it carries with it into our bodies and uses that to heal the organs that are most closely associated with the water element. So this is why, in part, it's such a great tonic for the kidneys and the urinary bladder. And it's often used with great success in treating chronic urinary tract infections, cystitis, and kidney stones as well. But just remember what we said earlier, you know, if you harvest it after the flowers have come, then it can actually contribute towards the formation of kidney stones. So timing in the harvest is of the utmost importance. This plant really has so many important health benefits and uses, so it's really one of those herbs that should pretty much be in every household. And if you have nettle growing wild in your local ecosystem, get to know it, harvest it carefully and sustainably, and it will reward you as a supreme food and medicine.